Welcome back to another youth-centered podcast. I'm very excited to have two guests from the middle school, two middle school educators that are running a terrific program, the ADL program here. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then we're going to talk about this great program and some of the things that have gone on in the past, some of the things that are going on this year, and then we'll always talk about what the future of the program will be. So, ladies, let me introduce Michaela first. If you could, now, Michaela, you've been a long-time resident of North Andover here, but for the few people that may not know you, who is Michaela Blaney?
Well, first, thanks, Rick, for having us. Again, I'm Michaela Blaney. I grew up in North Andover, grew up hanging out here at the youth center, although it was not the same youth center it is today. Yeah. We called it the Red Barn. It consisted of just going into the Red Barn, using the bathroom, and coming back outside to play basketball all day. But some of the best times of my life. I've been teaching in North Andover for 18 years, 14 years at the Atkinson School teaching phys ed, and then for the last 4 years at the middle school teaching fitness and wellness with Matt Abel, grades 6 through 8.
Absolutely. Michaela was a terrific athlete when she was here in the high school also. And our second guest is Rebecca. Rebecca, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Rebecca Duchesneau. I teach 7th grade social studies at NAMS. This is my 4th year here. I didn't grow up here, so I don't have as much to say as Michaela. But yeah, I love North Andover, and we're excited to be here.
Well, welcome to both of you. Let's get started. Either one of you can take this. Let's just define right now, what is ADL?
Okay, so ADL stands for the Anti-Defamation League. It's an organization, international organization, that was founded in 1913. And it really started to kind of combat anti-Semitism and kind of evolved to basically provide, fairness and justice for everyone. At the middle school, we call our program A World of Difference. It's through ADL, and it's for middle school and high school students. And basically we talk, we do projects and talk to 6th graders about, justice, and talk about prejudice and how those prejudice manifest. So we have in our program over 40 students this year.
And those are both middle school and high school kids, did you say?
So we just have middle school kids.
Okay.
The high school has a different program. It's not a World of Difference program through ADL, but some high schools do have high school ADL programs. Right now, it's just at the middle school.
Okay, great. Rebecca, so how did you get involved? And did you guys start the program in the middle school, or did it exist before you guys got involved?
So what happened was, a couple of years ago, our now superintendent, Greg Gilligan, had worked to get the World of Difference program here. He had worked to get the funding, to get all the permissions that he needed. And then last year, 2 years ago now, actually, 2 years ago, when Joan McQuaid was the principal, I almost said president, principal of NAMS, she had a bunch of people submit applications, and we were fortunate enough to be chosen as the 2 peer leaders. So last year was our first year, lots of trial and error. Our kids were awesome and were great guinea pigs. And this year we've really been able to hit the ground running with it.
So let's talk about this a little bit. I saw you with your first training, because actually you used the multipurpose room here at the youth center for part of your training. So, people always ask, how do kids get involved with it? So is there an application process? Do you look for kids for different grades? How does it all work?
So the great thing about this program is that grades 7 through 8, everyone's invited to apply. There is an application process, so there are a list of questions that are sent home. Students can either send them in through email, or they can send them in handwritten. So again, it's only 7th and 8th grade students, because we do teach those students that are chosen teach lessons to 6th graders. 6th graders will be given the chance to be part of the program if they apply in 7th and 8th grade. After applying, Rebecca and I and George also look at the applications, and we try to have a diverse group. We try to look to have boys, girls. We try to look to have, students in different grades, students of different races. Also, we take recommendations from teachers and other students on who they think would be good leaders in the school. Rebecca, if you want to add to that.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about our criteria to be chosen is that while we are looking for students who can handle missing classes every once in a while, we're not necessarily narrowing the pool down to kids who just have straight A's or just have straight A's and B's. We're really looking for kids who come from, all groups in our middle school, whether it's our academic high flyers or some kids who struggle more. We're really just looking for kids who are passionate about the work that we're doing.
I mean, that's great. I mean, I'm involved with a lot of leadership groups here, both at the youth center, but also involved with the schools. And, this is a program, obviously, with like a very diverse population. We've had even some leadership programs here that are strictly girls, because girls tend to sign up to things more than boys. But I've noticed just at your training that it seems like you have a wide range of kids, a wide range of, obviously, kids from a diverse backgrounds, everything from economics to race to gender and everything else. So after the kids are chosen, what is the first step? So first of all, what is the time commitment for this program?
So the time commitment, the regular time commitment throughout the school year is a once a week meeting that's about 47 minutes long. It takes place in my classroom and it's on Tuesdays. Then at the beginning of the year, there's an additional requirement where students miss 4 whole days of school for training with people who come from the Anti-Defamation League, who specifically work with peer leaders, training them to get ready to facilitate lessons on bias, prejudice, and discrimination. So that's the big one at the beginning of the year, and then for the rest of the year, it's a once-a-week meeting.
So I saw it because you actually had that one of those guest speakers at the training here at the Youth Center. You did. So is there a set training that they do? Is there stuff that they actually train you to continue doing it, or is it something they strictly do with the kids?
The answer to your first 2 questions is absolutely yes. They do have a very well fleshed out curriculum to get peer leaders ready. It's also a curriculum that we lean on for the rest of the year and use pretty much every single time we meet with them. There's training books, activities, and the people who have come to us from the Anti-Defamation League have been so prepared and so amazing.
What would some of that training take? Walk us through it. Like, what are some of the training stuff they would actually do?
So the training basically is divided into 2 pieces. The first part, and also Rebecca and I did, we were involved in a training in Vermont, a 2-day program where we actually learned how to train students. So the 2 trainers that ADL sent this year for the 4 trainings, we actually knew one of them because we went through training with her. Oh. She was a classroom teacher, and she decided during that training that this was actually her passion. She wanted to train students, so she left teaching and was one of our trainers this year. But I'm sorry, can you ask? I got off track.
No, just if you could actually walk us through. So when the kids were here in the training, what are some of the stuff? Is it team building stuff? Right. What are some of the things they do?
So the 2 parts that I was going to get to before I forgot the question was we talk about the isms, which are, for example, racism, sexism, weightism. We train students on what those things are, what they look like. Do they happen in our school? Some of them do. Some of them students didn't know what they were because they've never seen them before. So we talk about that. And then we also break them up into groups and teach them how to facilitate lessons that they will later on do for 6th graders during the year.
Nice. Rebecca, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I mean, I think Michaela covered it. The first part of it, we're covering all that content that she mentioned, bias, prejudice, what is identity. And then the second part, we're doing activities and forcing them to get up in front of everybody and teach something, which is really challenging for them. Awesome.
Now, let me ask you, because this is a little bit of the elephant in the room. So, and I always get people turned off with stuff when there's a cost involved and how much is to put the program on. So how is this program funded?
So this program is funded by the district through, I believe, the social emotional department.
Great.
So we've had issues in the past, like every school everywhere, with discrimination and prejudice and all of that amongst students, teachers, the whole gambit. And so Greg Gilligan with, Nikki Murphy and all of them up at central office really worked hard to bring this program to our building. So you've got tremendous support. I've heard Superintendent Gilligan talk about it. So how do you think it's been perceived from your community, and your community being the middle school?
obviously your peers, teachers, staff throughout the building. Is this a program that you feel like you got complete support from the building principal all the way down?
I feel like we definitely do. I don't think this program would be successful without everyone buying into it. First of all, anytime you have a program at your school where it allows for students to feel safe, for students that might not be able to speak up for themselves, for other students to be able to, be their ally, I can't picture any staff member at the middle school not being all for that. So definitely in that way. And then also teachers really go above and beyond. Our students miss a class every Tuesday. Sometimes it's the same one, sometimes it's a different one. We very rarely to never hear a complaint from a teacher that they might have to stay after school for a student to make up a test, or students might have to go in at the teacher's lunchtime and get an assignment. So I think without teachers buying into it, without their support, this would not be successful. And we do have students that every once in a while do struggle in a class because they are missing time. And we, of course, allow them to, miss a meeting or two and make up work. But we could not ask for any more support, I don't think. And George Gonsalves has been great, Steve and Cheryl as well.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we have the most supportive administrators you could ever ask for, both Steve and Cheryl and George. And then George, also the principal. I mean, it's just incredible. We've never, ever bumped into any resistance. Like, everybody's just behind us. It's great.
So you said the first year was last year, and you were kind of walking your way through it and trying to figure everything out. Tell me a little bit about what are some of the things that you did besides obviously the training stuff. Like, take me through the first year and those bumpy roads, so to speak, as you're building this program.
Yeah, so we really had no idea what to expect. Over the summer training when we were in Vermont with the ADL, they had laid everything out, but it's so different when you actually try to implement it with a group of, wonderful but sometimes wacky middle school students and with a tight schedule in our day. So at the beginning of the year, our 4 trainings went great. Then we started meeting with our kiddos once every other week, and we got to a slow start. We were like we have all the time in the world to get ready for our 6th grade facilitations, and then we were like, wait, it's January. We really have to pick up the pace. But last year we did a culture quilt at the middle school where all of our students made these, I'm trying to think about how to describe it, but essentially these squares of paper that they decorated with things about their heritage and their culture. And we got so many submissions from all the students. We hung them up all over the school. It was really wonderful. We participated in Race Amity Day up at the high school.
Sure.
That was really amazing. And we went to our favorite thing, which is the Youth Congress for World of Different Students. And it's held in Boston with students from all over New England. And we are going again, and we could not be more excited for that.
So talk a little bit about that. I mean, I saw pictures of that. It seemed like you guys had a great time, and I know kids love getting on a bus and doing something for the day. But the pictures that I saw last year from you guys was not just our kids; it was the kids from all around the state or whatever. What's that whole day like?
We get on a bus, as you mentioned, and then we go to Boston, and they get fed breakfast, which was unbelievable to them. They were like, there are scones. And we were like,
all about the food.
We are never just hanging around eating scones in the morning. And then we go into a gigantic function room full of thousands of students from all over New England. And there was this really cool band performing. And then there were some amazing keynote speakers. One of them was, help me with the name.
George Elbaum. Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Okay,
yep.
So there was George Elbaum, who was the Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
And then there was, what was his name? Zakem, first name?
Lenny Zakem's son.
Yeah,
I'm forgetting
Lenny
his first
Zakem's
name.
son was there also, because he is the person who kind of started the Anti-Defamation League. His father, not him.
And the Zakem Bridge is named after his father,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Because they build
Build
bridges
bridges.
between communities. And then also there were these powerful student speakers. There was this one girl, she was in high school. Her family were immigrants from an African country, and she just talked about the work that she does with advocating for people who face all of these discrimination problems. And our students were sitting there in shock. Like, I'm absolutely amazed that this girl was only in high school. I mean, she spoke better than most adults I've ever heard speak.
Agreed.
Well, so what was the feedback as you head back on the bus back to North Andover? Were kids wowed by this experience?
I think they definitely were wowed. They couldn't wait for this coming year. And I think really George Elbaum was amazing to hear, but I think one of the really cool things was leaving on the bus. We got to actually break up into groups with other kids from different schools across New England, and they even had some student presenters that presented the facilitations that we do for sixth graders. And because we've only had our seventh and eighth graders that facilitated that we've seen, I think leaving, the kids were really excited. Some of them said to us, oh my gosh, now seeing them facilitate, I think we do a better job. So it gave them a little more confidence because you don't have anything to compare to. So I think it gave them more confidence going into the classroom and facilitating. And actually this year we are hoping to have 4 students facilitate at this year's conference.
Wow,
so that's
we'll have
in the
our
works.
own kids do
hopefully.
it.
Yes,
they're going to lead one of the breakout sessions. Cross our fingers.
Good for that. And who are those kids? Are those kids chosen yet?
So in our heads, they're chosen, but we have to.
They don't know.
Yes,
They
they
don't
don't
know.
know.
I bet I'll know some of those
Yeah.
kids but good. We'll talk. Maybe we'll actually do a follow up and have the kids come in to talk
They
about
would
that.
love it. They would impress you.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. So let me ask you something. It's 7th and 8th graders. So if you're a 7th grader last year, do you continue on as an 8th grader? And does that 8th grader go to the high school? Is there a conduit for them to connect with the high school program?
So if they're in 7th grade with us as a peer leader, which is what we call our students,
Sure.
they get the option to continue with us in 8th grade if they want. They don't have to. They resubmit an application that's slightly different from the one that new students submit. And pretty much all of our students came back this
we
year,
had
which
all
is
of
really
them.
So
exciting.
kids didn't opt out. They wanted to
No,
go
only
to
a couple.
second year.
Only a couple
Okay.
who felt a little just overwhelmed with the transition to 8th grade. When they get to high school, there is the Race Amity group up at the high school, which has a very similar mission in terms of promoting safe environments where everyone feels accepted. So our students can join that program when they reach the high school.
Nice. And who's the Race Amity coordinator at the high school?
Laureen Marks.
I think it's
So it's
Laureen
Maureen.
Marks.
Okay, great.
I
So
One of the history teachers.
Yes, I don't know
believe.
his name, but I believe he is the head of the history department, and I feel really bad for not knowing.
okay. So there's a connection though. So if
Yes.
a kid wanted to go and through your help, they can at least make sure there's some kids aware that got a little bit of skill that could carry on at the high school. And obviously some of the Race Amity stuff they're doing the last couple of years, I've been extremely impressed with. I love how it's student driven and some of the speakers they've had with the kids actually speaking about it's been very, very impressive. So what are you doing this year besides obviously heading to Boston for the conference? What are some other things you guys will do this year?
So one of the really cool things that we did in November that we were just talking, we had spoken at the PD Day the other day, and I was saying the highlight of me for me this year was going to the Atkinson School. They had their first annual family potluck. And the goal, one of my good friends, because I taught there, one of the goals was to get all families that, usually don't get a chance to show up for after school stuff or for night activities to be involved in this. They have over 40 different languages spoken at the Atkinson School, and these teachers are always curious. We see the same families. We love these families, but we've never met this family. How can we get them in here? So they advertised for this, and basically families came. They brought a dish from their culture, a recipe. They brought the dish. They were laid out in hallways. They were also invited to bring a book and read it in their language. The cool thing about that too is that some of these books all students knew about, whether it was like Peter Rabbit and they were read in that family's native language, and students that didn't speak this language were watching and listening and laughing at parts that they already knew. So it was pretty cool to see that. They had dancing. Students were able to map their families' diversity, where they were from, and our students were able to go there. We brought 15 students. They were able to volunteer. I thought not only was it a cool activity for Atkinson School students, but just for our students to see how diverse the Atkinson School was. And some of the feedback from teachers was they were so grateful that our students could help, but also that they met families that they've never met before. Families, they were finding out that some families don't show up to these things because mom doesn't have her license and wants to, but they got family friends to come drive them that night. It was just an awesome night. So that was the highlight of the year for me, and I think for a lot of the students to be able to be part of that.
And major shout out to Ben Abbott and Fritz Loth, who directed traffic
in the pouring, freezing rain.
Yeah.
Sure.
In their safety vests. They did great. There were no car accidents.
Nice. So let me ask you, I always try to judge things with like the effect it's having on your kids. So as you've been into your second year now, what are some things that you're seeing from your peer leaders?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So I think the obvious easy one is that when you take a bunch of middle schoolers who are not comfortable speaking in front of their peers about anything, let alone really controversial or difficult to talk about conversations and topics, it's been a pleasure to watch some of our more soft-spoken students, really kind of break out a little bit of their shell and realize, oh, I can do this. I can stand in front of a group of people and facilitate conversations about topics that make everyone really uncomfortable, like race and religion and political views and all of that. So that's been, I know it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but that's a really fun one to see.
Yeah,
What do you see?
One of the things that I like seeing this year is, since it's a second-year program, and now we're able to see our 7th graders that were peer leaders that are now in 8th grade. They have now a role of mentor to the the 6th graders that they were teaching that are now 7th graders. And I was saying to the other day to Rebecca that it was a little scary to me because I didn't want these 8th graders to go make 7th graders feel like, well, this is how it's done and this is what we did last year, and make them feel like they're not doing the right thing. But they have completely filled that mentor role. I feel like our facilitation groups this year will be stronger because we'll have a few 8th graders that did it last year, few new 7th graders. And then I'm loving, we have some 8th graders that were not part of the program last year, and I'm loving how they just fit right in. And these students are brave. Sometimes it's easy to just go along with like people saying the wrong thing and just standing back. But these students are brave to stand up for students and to speak on, like Rebecca said, on things that can be uncomfortable. That might not be the, in quotes, the cool thing or the easy thing to do.
Yeah. And they're also noticing more of the isms like ableism, weightism, racism in the building, because a lot of these things make people uncomfortable where they go like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that, but they can't put a name to it. Sure. And if you can't name it, it doesn't get the attention sometimes it deserves because it's just another teeny issue. But if you can point something out and say, hey, that's really anti-Semitic, or you shouldn't be doing that because that's kind of racist, that really gives it a gravity and a weight that makes people look up and say, oh, you're right, this is an issue. This is something we need to keep talking about.
Well, I think it's tremendous what you guys are doing at the middle school and obviously at the high school, but I always wonder, should we be doing even things with the kids at the younger ages? And I like how you were down at the Atkinson School, and we talk a lot. I mean, the Atkinson School is our most diverse school. Mm-hmm. It always has been in many ways. Do you ever see that, once you get your ducks in line as far as building this program, that there can be maybe more opportunities for our middle school kids to get down to the elementary school to maybe do some training with the elementary peer leaders?
Michaela's already ahead of you.
Well, it's funny that you asked that question. So once we get our first facilitation done, which is going to be in the beginning of February, we want to get some of our students over to, and these two schools we're saying just because they're within walking distance of the middle school, Kittredge School and the Atkinson School, we're going to have some of our students go over and read books on diverse characters to students. I know some of these topics are heavy, so you have to kind of see what elementary students can handle, but I think that would be a great way to get conversation started, and our students are looking forward to doing that. So that's one of the ways, but we're hoping to do more with elementary students. I think that would be
this could be a total system program. I did a podcast with the group Understanding Our Differences, which does a lot with both the elementary school and the middle school, and the more we can do some of those things, we are a changing community. I talk about it a lot, and I love the fact that it's a changing community, and we need to embrace a lot more of the isms, as you just said. So let me talk to you a little bit about, we put these leadership programs together, and then we have we always have assemblies on different issues or whatever. My biggest cop-out sometimes is, okay, so what do you do beyond that one-time thing? Now, this isn't obviously a one-time thing. You're continuing. But I kind of want to get at is what's the impact? You touched on it, but what's the impact with the middle school community with this program? Are you seeing changes, even on the smallest degree?
Yeah, so right now, this is only the second year of our program.
Sure.
So in terms of big scale changes, I'm not really sure that I can comment too much on that. But especially with our students, as we've mentioned, they're definitely more willing to call out things that they're seeing. But even with these now 7th graders that I have, our kids last year facilitated in their 6th grade classrooms. And I can hear a lot of conversations that I haven't heard in the past. And maybe I'm just paying attention more too, but sure. I would like to give us and our kids some credit. Conversations about these things like race and gender identity and what is the difference. I'm hearing those conversations a lot more. And I also think that a lot of teachers in the past, at least when I started working there, had brought up concerns about whether these issues were being addressed on a large scale or not. And now I feel like some of them, hopefully all, but are feeling that there is at least something being done. There is a program that is training students. I think they're feeling like we are moving in the right direction, and I think that's really important. We've had a lot of, staff come up to us and tell us positive things about our students who have facilitated lessons in their classrooms, and they had them as 6th graders. I think we're making small changes, and I hope those small changes will lead to big changes.
Yeah, I actually, to piggyback on that, I had a teacher the other day come up to me and say, you know what, I'm seeing the students that are in your program during my class be able to add more conversation because they have experience in this. And so that's pretty cool to hear that, that our students are making connections between history or world civ. So I'm liking that they're able to incorporate what we're teaching, what they're doing, the work that they're doing into classes.
Yeah, and I'd probably like to talk to you in the near future of how we can actually translate this to the youth center, right? So all of your kids, most of your peer leaders are involved here at the youth center in some aspect or not. But, if we can carry it out into the community, obviously you guys are involved with the kids 6 hours a day during the school day and a little bit after school with your programs. But we got the other end of it, right? We're all afternoon, early evenings, weekends, and things like that. So I think there's some real connections we can do that. So let me, a little bit of a wish list here. So if I could convince Superintendent Gilligan to give you an unlimited budget. You're only in your 2nd year, but what do you, I can tell just by your passion that you both have, what would be some things you'd like to take this to a whole different level?
As educators, I don't think we've ever been asked that question. You have an unlimited budget. Wait, what? Oh, wow. I think it would be really amazing if we could bring in some more speakers for our student speakers from our communities that are doing great work with, with the stuff that we're doing when we're talking about acceptance of all people. I think that would be amazing. I think it would also be amazing if we could take them to, what was I going to say? If we could meet up with other schools who are running this program at times, maybe a field trip to another school, that could be really incredible.
Yeah.
I love this, going to visit another school. A few years ago, I was involved in something called the Celtics Playbook. I don't know if you heard about this, but one of the great parts of that.
You did this with Lawrence School System.
We did. Correct, yeah. And one of the, I think, mind-blowing things for our students was just going back and forth. So some of the students from Lawrence would come to our school, we'd go to their school, but just the exchange of stories and the different stories from each school, but how we all, even though we're experiencing different things at schools, the similarities in each student. So just going to go visit schools. Also, I'd love to, there was mention of the Holocaust Museum when we went to the
one in Washington, D.C.?
Not that one.
I was like, that would be a really big trip.
I'll have to look at this. But when we went to the Youth Congress, there was an exhibit. There's a at some college, and I'll have to check and look into that. But I'd love to go visit that.
Sure. I mean, I actually got invited to speak to Pat McGravy's 8th grade civics class. And to your point, I know that we have curriculums we have to follow and everything. But I do like the fact of maybe bringing people in our community to come in and talk about, and in this case, talking about issues that would pertain to actually like the world of different stuff. We have amazing residents in this town that people don't know that have incredible stories. And in Pat's case, it was a civics class, obviously, but I was with Diana DeZoglio and other, politicians and stuff. And I just feel that kids learn better when they hear stories. I'm a big believer in storytelling and, hearing people's stories. So yeah, maybe that's something, and I don't think you need a budget for that. I'll be honest with you.
No, we don't.
There's tons of people to be more than willing to come in.
I know when you ask about budget, I really can't think of anything extra we would need. I mean, we've been so supported by everyone, and so much of what we do doesn't require any money.
Well, Principal George and Superintendent Gilligan are probably happy that you answered it that way after I told them.
I'm kidding. Give us all the money. No, I'm kidding.
So we're about to wrap up this podcast, and it's been great. But we always give both of our guests, if we have multiple guests, what we call our final word. And you can be anything. Address it to our listeners. Will be kids, adults, professionals in our community. And what would you like to have people hear? One final word from both of you on your program.
I'd kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think a lot of times, like on the news, you only hear and see the bad that's going on. And you might hear, when I moved to the middle school, a lot of my colleagues, are you crazy? Middle school, that's the worst years. Kids are fresh. And I don't find that at all. I think these students at the middle school, whether you're in the World of Difference program or not, they are inclusive. They have empathy. I wish people would hear more stories about how strong these students and how wonderful they are.
Rebecca?
I would just want to say thank you to all of our students who participate in the program. You make it really easy for us to work hard at work that is worth doing.
That's awesome. If there are students interested in getting the future, they can see you down at the middle school. But how about what contact information can you provide for parents that just want to hear more about this program?
Both of our emails are on the North Andover Middle School website. I'm more than happy to spell mine out, but my last name's pretty rough. So I think the best thing to do would really be to go to the website.
So they could
email
you from the website, and obviously kids that are walking around the building, you both have an open door policy. They can come in and hear about it, and hopefully we can continue to grow what you guys are doing at all the levels. Like I said, obviously we got some great stuff going on at the high school and what you guys are doing at the middle school, and then if we could ever get down to the elementary school, I think there's a lot of worth doing that. So I want to thank you for coming on our podcast. This would be great. This will get up in the next day or so on all of our podcast sites and our YouTube channel. And want to let our listeners know we have a number of podcasts coming up. We're trying to do one a week. We will be doing part 2 of our addiction series with Nancy Sederi, and that's coming up in the next 2 weeks. So I want to again thank our guests in this incredible program. And as we finish every podcast, we always say too much passion is never enough passion.